Hello everyone. This story is about, what if God-like Naruto was able to feel other people's emotions and fall in love with Mei and Anko? Please like, share and subscribe for more. Also check the other fics I've uploaded. Now let's start. Naruto took in deep breaths as he contemplated the new information given to him from Itachi. He sat in his hotel room, the lights dim and the windows open wide, his empathy stretching the length of the village. Happy children clung to exhausted parents. Lewd and/or desperate women clung to unsavory men, and occasionally other women. The festival was still going, and the influx of so many different emotions was slightly jarring. Joy, lust, exhaustion, greed, all these things were in huge amounts, and Naruto wanted to shut it out. It was strange and annoying, he couldn't turn off his empathy. It was irritating at times. He wished he could block it all out once in a while, but alas, the blessing was also a curse. Nothing was what it seemed in life, and there was no easy. Instead of getting upset with his no-off button ability, he decided to go over what he had learned earlier that day. His friend had sought him out when he was training with Sasuke and Gaara. The abrupt welcoming was so very Itachi-like, but everything after was not. Ah, he chuckled, finally opening his eyes. Itachi. They were connected, so Naruto and Sasuke could feel Gaara's shock. Uchiha Itachi was the missing nin. He was a man even Suna knew to be extremely dangerous. Gaara had been told that if he ever met this man, to let loose Shikaku and welcome death's cold embrace. So to see him walk from the shadows behind his Shursho with his crimson eyes blazing, it wasn't a surprise when the sand under their feet pulsed with life. Ready to fight back the man who the monsters were even afraid of. All but one. We need to talk, Taicho. Itachi spoke, ignoring who was present. His crimson eyes gazed at the smirk on his senpai's lips, the bandages around his brother's eyes, the sand at his feet that circled him like a predator. All of this was taken in within seconds with the mighty Sharingan. It is important. Naruto raised a single eyebrow, curious with his friend's statement. You can speak openly here, Itachi. Naruto started. What is so important you'd risk your cover to relay? He asked. It wasn't like Itachi to break character. He was a calm, analytical person, one who could keep a stoic face and slaughter his entire family. To see him even slightly nervous was something new. He glanced at his brother, who stayed silent, not a trace of the egotistical revenge-crazed child he once thought would face him. Instead a calm, in-control shinobi stood in his presence, confidence leaking off his flesh. His brother was different. The Akatsuki, he started, the words carrying an unknown weight to them. They are here. His eyes examined his senpais, the Sharingan deciphering everything. But you already knew that, didn't you, Taicho? He shook his head. Of course his Taicho knew. He knew everything, it seemed. But do you know who all has come? Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly. Itachi was implying there was more than just him and Kisame. Out with it then, Karasu. He used Itachi's ANBU codename, expressing his seriousness. He didn't want to joust with words this time. Itachi involuntarily straightened out of years of habit, his ANBU days flooding to the forefront of his mind. Hi, he began. Hoshigaki Kisame, Orochimaru of the Sannin, Sasori of the Red Sand, and myself have all congregated here. He looked his captain in the eyes, blood red meeting molten gold. Our goal is to recruit Tsunade of the Sannin into the Akatsuki, and capture Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto was silent for a moment, his mind racing with thoughts at speeds that would baffle most. And then, he laughed. Your organization is so foolish, Itachi, it's almost comical. He shook his head. I am perfectly capable of facing all of you myself, if need be, but I am not alone. He then smirked. Jiraiya is with me, and the two of us together are unstoppable. You cannot possibly hope to take on two master sages at once. Not even you are that thick. It's suicide. He then gestured to Gaara and Sasuke. And these two are certainly not useless. Itachi started. We have been conditioning ourselves to withstand your chakra. He explained. You won't be able to catch us like before. That is not a problem. Naruto replied. Have you forgotten the power of a Sannin, Karasu? Have you forgotten what Jiraiya and I am capable of when we truly seek destruction? Itachi involuntarily shivered at the memory of what the two could do together. Even if Tsunade were to join you, and if you fought like we were actual enemies, we would come out victorious. Arrogance does not suit you, Taicho. Itachi said. Naruto narrowed his eyes. I am not being arrogant, Itachi. I am merely stating facts. He finally stood from the ground. I am more powerful than I ever have been. Jiraiya has also been studying and practicing my theories on senjutsu. We are so much more than we used to be, it even scares me at times. That statement caused Itachi to shiver once again. Nonetheless, he continued when he brought his trembling hands together to calm them. You should be cautious. Those two with you may be strong, but they can't fight on equal ground with any of the Akatsuki. And you and Jiraiya may find yourselves overwhelmed. Sasori was a man who could fell countries with his skills. Every member of the Akatsuki could, actually. And there was 4 of them all readying to take Uzumaki Naruto down. Naruto smiled. It was a monstrous, terrifying smile that would send lesser men running for the hills. I can't wait. He stated in a voice that befitted a monster. Itachi sighed, his eyes closing in frustration. He knew his Taicho was incredibly powerful, outstandingly so, but there were, at the very least, 4 S-ranked shinobi, all of whom were borderline SS class, ready to capture him. He wasn't truly Naruto's enemy, true, but he couldn't allow the others to question his loyalty. Their leader was too dangerous to cross, too powerful to openly defy. Itachi decided to further his information giving. The Akatsuki's leader has requested Orochimaru personally. He began. I don't know why, but he believes the snake can give us something that will help us fight you on equal grounds. He really had no clue why Orochimaru was requested, of all people. But he knew it wouldn't be pretty. The old Hibi was brilliant when it came to chaos, and when he thought about Pain getting any stronger, he wondered if even Naruto could stand against him. Pain was the only man Itachi had ever been wary of. Naruto was his friend, his Taicho, there was no reason for him to fear the youngest ANBU operative in history. Naruto narrowed his eyes, his face expressing his deep thought. Something felt sinister when he thought about Orochimaru being of assistance to someone powerful enough to cause his greatest agent even a sliver of fear. Itachi was a man who could and would do anything for his home, and the fact that this leader of his was strong enough to warrant a warning in person meant he couldn't be taken lightly. He was powerful and confident, but he was not arrogant, and his friend was trying to explain something he felt was of great importance to him, so he listened. Okay, Itachi, he started, I hear you. I will not take the Akatsuki lightly. Itachi didn't show it, he didn't show much of any emotion, but he was relieved. So let me tell you how this whole thing is going to go down. He stated in an excited voice. Itachi knew that something glorious would transpire soon. He could tell by the smile on the Kamikige's face. Naruto took in another deep breath, holding in a smirk at his plan. It was devious, and he couldn't wait to wake up and have some fun. After explaining his plan to Itachi, Naruto had ordered the Akatsuki spy to talk with Sasuke privately. They were true brothers, and they needed time to talk. The wounds that scarred their hearts and souls wouldn't heal unless they wanted it to, and with Sakura in his life, Sasuke no longer wished for death and mayhem. He understood Itachi was not the one to blame, he was merely the tool. Danzo. He was the one who would pay one way or another. After the last Uchiha went to a private location, Gaara had gone to his own room, taking pleasure in something that was so foreign to him. He took a nap. Sleep was a privilege to the red-headed boy, and now that he could afford to close his eyes without fear of never waking up again, he slept whenever he was not needed. It wasn't the strangest hobby Naruto ever heard of, but it was up there. Stretching his already massive empathy even further, he felt Sasuke and Itachi near their temporary training ground. Both of the Uchiha expressing emotions that he had just recently come to know as well. Acceptance. Itachi accepted the new Sasuke, the monster who would one day surpass Uchiha Madara. And Sasuke accepted that Itachi was still his big brother, someone he still looked up to and loved more than most anything. Older brother and little brother were once again reunited, and he could feel something interesting. Yes, the Uchiha did react, even on a physical level, to highly strong emotional moments. Trauma seemed to awaken power, but love. Naruto's smirk seemed to make the room colder. The world would weep when the 3 of them were at their prime. The very thought sent shivers down his spine. He then felt a peaceful Gaara, which was a stark contrast to what the boy used to be. In his sleep, Gaara felt pure, like he was still innocent, like he hadn't tasted the blood of hundreds. It made the blonde smile. The assassin's blade would become the monster's shield, and together, they would be unconquerable. He was truly forging a formidable team. He could feel Jiraiya, who was surprisingly not drowning himself in women and sake. No, his godfather was actually training. The raw power and determination his sensei was exuding was beautiful and spectacular. He knew that Jiraiya was powerful, but even then, whenever he felt the Toad Sannin train or battle an opponent, he was always so fascinated by it. Jiraiya could be a lecherous bastard at times, but he was also someone Naruto respected, and he recognized his power. Tsunade was, as usual, with Shizune, at another pub. The woman seemed to drink more alcohol than Jiraiya, which was no small feat. He knew it was to keep her sanity, but it couldn't be healthy. Even with her insanely advanced healing abilities, her body would eventually give out. A small tug pulled at his senses, and he raised an eyebrow. "Yes, Kurama?" he asked. "We need to speak with you, Naruto." His very first friend's voice rang in his head. His tone was serious, and he knew Kurama wasn't in a joking mood. He could tell they needed to discuss something important with him. Closing his eyes, he let his mind drift to his mindscape, where three giant beings stared at him. He looked at Kurama questioningly. "Is there something wrong?" he asked. "Nothing's wrong, Naruto." Kurama began. "We just think we have discovered something you may be interested in." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Oh," he asked. "Do tell." He finished, curious at what they could have possibly discovered within his mind. "Your power, it's unique." Sun started. Naruto looked at him as if annoyed. "Stating the obvious, are we?" He decided to tease the Yonbi. "If you don't want to hear what we have to say, then just leave." Sun replied irritably. Naruto held up his hands, placating the lava-wielding tailed beast. No, he began. "Please, continue." Sun looked annoyed but continued nevertheless. "As I was saying, you don't use chakra like normal humans." He started. "When I first met you, I dismissed it as a freak occurrence. You humans have a knack for developing skills that defy human possibility. Here, Isabu took over. Chakra was never meant to be used the way it currently is. Ninjutsu was forged in the corruption of our father's gift to the world." Naruto was very interested on what his family had to say. Ninshu, Kurama started the word with something akin to fond reverence, was the Rikudo Sennin's religion, his harbinger of peace. But like the fools they are, humans saw it as a means of power. Naruto could feel the Kyuubi's malice. The way humans currently use chakra is unrefined. It has no beauty to it, no purpose. It is inferior to the ways our father used it in every aspect. Naruto felt no malice towards him. It seemed the Bija held him in a separate category. They didn't see him as human. There have been a few humans to tap into the real potential of chakra. Sun started again. The greatest example would be Senju Hashirama of the Mokuton. Naruto actually widened his eyes. The Shodai used chakra the way the Sage of Six Paths had? Mokuton is a very clever ninshu method. Isabu began. It combined earth and water to create life. Life energy, Naruto, is a key factor of ninshu. The pieces of the puzzle began to come together. With the Mokuton, Hashirama was able to subdue all 9 Biju at once if he so wished. I thought he was the strongest human since the Rikudo Sennin. Kurama took up the conversation. I had never before seen someone with the same magnitude of raw life energy since our father. A monster smirk crossed the Kyuubi's face, mirrored by Naruto. Isabu and Sun slightly shivered at how in sync the two were. They were exactly alike, terrifyingly powerful and scary as all hell. Until I met you, that is. He finished in a dark voice. So you're saying I'm like the Shodai? Naruto questioned. I use chakra how it was originally intended to be used. This information was monumental. He loved to learn, and he was learning something so very delicious right now he was sure there was a stupid look on his face. Somewhat, yes. Sun replied. You of course use ninjutsu as well, but your core techniques, they are very reminiscent to our father's. We have watched you use your abilities, and we have come to a conclusion. Isabu started. You weren't born with the ability to use and shape natural energy, or feel others with empathy. Those are but byproducts of what you were truly born with. Kurama narrowed his eyes at the boy before them, a suspicious look marring his face. You already somewhat guessed this, didn't you? He asked. The other Bija looked at the two of them incredulously. Naruto smirked at his first and best friend. I can't hide anything from you, can I? He asked. He chuckled, nodding his head. I knew that my senjutsu prowess and empathy were derived from something, but what that something was I had not the slightest idea. He replied honestly. He always knew there was something else, something below the sage dust and empathy, but he didn't have the information as to what it was. You already know the answer now, don't you? It wasn't a question. Say it, he continued at the blonde's nod, speak it into existence. The shared mindscape went silent, as if in reverence. The Bijou waited with bated breath as they stared at what was possibly the most powerful mortal to ever walk the earth. Naruto smirked, his excitement at what he was about to say almost palpable. He opened his mouth, and spoke what he was truly a master of, what he had been born able to use. It was almost ironic, really. Something that was a tool for peace and harmony was able to cause so much death and destruction that even Kage feared. It was chaotic harmony, and it was his to command. Ninshu. Walking through the beautiful village of Kirigakure no Sato was a spectacular experience. Well, walking through the village in the shadows would be the correct statement, but it was still beautiful. Minato knew that once they hit Mizu no Kuni, the Mizukage would be safe. No one would attack her in her own borders, and the Kiri Anbu that met her there were more than efficient to safeguard their powerful and beautiful leader. That said, though, Rohan knew just how important this woman really was. They didn't look at the auburn-haired woman as a foreigner, as a potential enemy. They looked at Terumi Mei as a high-profile target that needed to be safe at all times. She was a lover of the Godslayer, and if anything happened to her, even Nezumi too didn't want to think what his son would do. With the power at their fingertips, anything was possible. Total and utter extinction was not far out of their reach, and the previous Hokage knew that his son could wipe an entire village off the face of the planet if he was angry enough. Plus, Nezumi too had accepted Mei as his son's love interest, or, one of them, at least. The very thought still made him blush slightly. With that acceptance, came the desire to protect. He remembered how it felt to want to keep someone out of danger again, something he only ever truly felt to this degree when Kushina was pregnant with their child. The Mizukage was someone extremely important to Naruto, and his son had experienced far too much suffering and loneliness for him not to have this woman by his side. He was starved of love, and Mei and Anko were the perfect cure. Civilians and shinobi alike brightened the moment they saw their beautiful leader, elated that no harm had come to her in Konoha. Like she had thought, word of the invasion of Konoha had spread, and her people were worried sick. The people of Kiri, hell, of all Mizu no Kuni, knew that Konoha would not harm their Kage. Their savior, the bringer of hope, one of the legendary demons of the resistance was there, and everyone knew how fond their Mizukage and the Kamikage were of each other. Rumors, more like love stories of war, floated around, most of them untrue. Fantasies of the older, beautiful woman falling in love with a much younger shinobi from another village were the most told. The whole forbidden love thing really got the people going, and it didn't help that the newest make-out series of romance, more like smut novels, had been exactly that. Jiraiya had, very unsubtle, written about them and their time together when they first met. The old pervert just changed the names, and added a lot of adult material. She and Naruto hadn't done half the stuff he wrote about, but it didn't matter, the people ate it up. Even now, just walking in secret from the shadows, Nezumi too could hear small parts of conversations about the monster would never let harm befall his princess and the bringer of hope loves Mizukage-sama too much to let her get hurt. It was the strangest thing he had ever experienced. Oh, the fact that everyone knew his son loved Mei was slightly surprising, and the fact they didn't hate her for loving a Konoha-born ninja was something that wouldn't have happened in his time. But the oddest thing of all was how much the people of Kiri adored his son. It was absurd. There may be a treaty between them, but treaties never lasted, and true peace and understanding between nations was unheard of. Yet, here he was, listening to the whispers of their savior, once again watching over Mizu like the angel they thought he was. It was enough to bring a small tear to his eye. His son was doing it. Naruto was slowly bringing peace to the world on a scale he had never been able to. True, he had forced, almost single-handedly, the other nations to a ceasefire, all but ending the Fourth War, but that hadn't been true peace. It was strained, and the consequences of his actions were still causing problems. He shook the thoughts of his failure from his mind, allowing himself to bask in the love another nation felt for his son. Jiraiya was right, he would teach the child of prophecy, but he was wrong about one thing. He was not the one, Naruto was. He did not doubt that for a second. His son would change the world in more than one way, and he was sure that it would be fantastic. Catching the signal from Ukami, the entire team stopped, watching as the Mizukage turned to them, going through a well-known Konoha shinobi code with her hands. It wasn't a NBU code that was highly classified. What she was signing was common among Konoha shinobi, taught at the academy. It was mostly used between Genin and Chunin, but every shinobi knew it. No doubt Naruto taught it to her. The fact that she knew it didn't seem to surprise Ukami, so Nezumi too decided it was okay. It was amazing just how respected his son was in Rohan. He and Kakashi were like living legends within the ANBU core, and he wouldn't doubt that they would disobey their Hokage if ordered by the original Nezumi. It was incredible. Mei had requested that Nezumi too join her in her office. Looking to Ukami, in respect to the team leader, he was given permission to join the Mizukage. Within minutes, Mei was sitting at her desk, with a professional-looking Nezumi too standing at attention at the door, showing her the respect of someone of her status. Appearances were everything, and even though he could kill the woman in the blink of an eye very easily meant nothing when it came to politics. "Relax, Nezumi-san," she stated. "Please, my office is secure. We are the only ones here, and I'd rather talk to you without the mask of your son," she said softly. Appearances aside, she didn't want to be on the bad side of Namake's Minato for multiple reasons. The first and most obvious reason was that he was terrifyingly powerful. It was said that he was just as strong as Sarutobi Hiruzen when the man was in his prime. And every nation that witnessed the third god of shinobi's wrath still wept and feared his destructive techniques. The Blitz had happened nearly 15 years ago, and it was still the scariest thing the current era had experienced. And the fact that he could single-handedly face the Kyuubi no Kitsune, even if he sacrificed his life for the village, was something that spoke of his ability. Facing a Bijou, any one of them, was something no shinobi wished. The second, and most important to the Kiri-born woman, was that the man before her was the father of the person she loved with all her heart. She knew she would be Naruto's for as long as he would let her. She never wanted to live without him, and even now, she missed him dearly. His very presence was soothing, his touch warming, and his love out of this world. He was like a drug, and Mei knew she was addicted. She didn't want Naruto's father to hate or even dislike her. It was important, because Naruto was her family now. That thought actually made her blush, and her whole body felt hot. She had a family. Shaking her head from her thoughts, she looked to the blonde man who was now unmasked. Minato would be her family as well, and she wanted to know he was well respected, both as a shinobi and Naruto's father. "Is this better, Mizukage-sama?" he asked politely. Mei nodded, smiling at his manners. "Hi, Minato-san," she replied. "And please, call me Mei," she continued. "It would be embarrassing if my father spoke so formally to me," she teased. What she didn't know was that Minato had the charisma of an angel, and he could very well turn the tides if he so wished. "Is there a reason you wished to speak to me in private, Mei-kun?" he replied. That particular suffix was like an older teacher speaking to a very young student. A tick mark appeared on her lovely face, and she smiled at him a little too sweetly. "Indeed I have," she answered shortly. She obviously did not like the suffix he added to her name. "Good. And it is very important that you are discreet." Her slightly annoyed face turned serious, and Minato could detect nervousness within her eyes. "What is wrong, Mei-san?" he asked, dropping the innocent banter. If something made her so nervous, he would help in any way he could. "I need you to take 2 of my operatives with you back to Konoha," she stated. Minato raised a brow. "I have an SS-ranked mission for Mitarashi Anko," she continued, causing Minato to look at her in confusion. "They will escort her here, in secret, of course. There will be another Hokage soon, and this mission needs to begin before that happens. The utmost secrecy is critical, for what I am about to tell you will affect you, me, Anko, Naruto, and both our villages without a doubt." Minato was now very alert, his Hokage mode active. His son and his village were all he had left, and Mei was speaking as if something monumental was going to transpire. "What is going on, Mei?" he asked. She looked out the window, a very nervous expression marring her face, as she gently laid a hand on her stomach. "Hopefully, nothing," she said in a whisper that screamed falsehood. Whatever it was she thought was going on, she hoped it did. "But if I'm right, your son will no longer be invincible, for he will gain a weakness," she said. Minato's eyes widened when she told him what she thought was going on, and he couldn't determine if he was furious or the happiest person alive at the moment. One thing was for sure, if this information got out, Naruto's enemies would have a way to hurt him. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, molten gold, greeting the world after hours of them being closed. He had learned a lot within those hours, and he couldn't help but smile. He now knew the origins of his power, and he felt a sensation of being whole, oddly enough. The question of what he was and where his abilities came from always haunted him. He thought his abilities came from something sinister, but the truth couldn't have been farther from. His empathy, his ability to absorb, shape and mold natural energy, unity, all of it, it was all forms of ninshu. It almost scared him when he thought about it. If he was this powerful, if he could bring the elemental nations to their knees with almost 13 years of using ninshu, what had its creator been capable of? Not much was known about the Sage of Six Paths. He was more like a fantasy, a mythical character from a fable of incredible impossibility. He was the giver of chakra, and the man who created the moon. Such things were beyond human capability, and he wondered, with slight reverence, if the Rikudo Sennin was human. He had spoken to his Bija family about the all-powerful man, and what they had said had shocked him. He was by far one of the most powerful shinobi to ever walk the earth, there was no doubt about that. He was in the same league as Senju Hashirama, Uchiha Madara, Sarutobi Hiruzen, and his father, Namikaze Minato. His enemies whispered his name in fear, and all the nations at least now knew to tread carefully around him. He had done incredible, if slightly monstrous things, it depended on the viewer, and he knew he was a force to be reckoned with. Even still, Kurama had looked him in the eyes, not a sliver of deceit in his red, slit orbs, and said that his father could crush him with the power in his pinky finger. That had been an unpleasant thought. Power was everything to Naruto, and the fact that he was so inferior to anyone, be them alive or dead, irked him like nothing else. This Rikudo Sennin was, to put it bluntly, a cheater. The power of his eyes was beyond human grasp, and he was sure that made him an unfair cheater. However, Kurama had gone on to say, with the same amount of seriousness, that Naruto was the only person who could ever reach even a fraction of the power his father possessed. The Bija had expressed how scary that thought was, because even a fraction of the Sage of Six Paths' power was beyond even their own. That thought had been very, very pleasing. His potential was unrivaled, and even they were frightened at what he could become. Mortals were not supposed to reach the level he was quickly approaching. A mortal body couldn't house that much power, and that was a key factor in why the Bija held him above simple mortals. He was, as they put it, a transcended human, not a mortal, but not mortal at the same time. It was just a fancy way of saying, which had been slightly surprising, that with the rate he was going, his life energy would never die out. Essentially, if one could increase one's life force to a certain point, one could live forever. Oh, they could very well be killed, but once one reached that point, they were usually very capable. This information surprised and, if he were honest, scared him. Everlasting life was not a big deal to the Biju, for obvious reasons, but for humans, it was uncharted territory. But after some time of thinking, Naruto had made his decision. He would not live without Anko or Mei, and if he couldn't find a way to give them everlasting life, he would die alongside them. He'd rather be with them in the afterlife than live without them for eternity. He had asked why the Sage of Sixth Paths hadn't lived forever, and the Bija looked disappointed. Apparently, the first sage wished to leave humanity to the peace he had brought, letting them live on their own instead of under him rule. This had even made Naruto disappointed. Humanity had failed him. He shook that disappointment away, knowing he couldn't do anything to change it. This was the world they lived in, and he wasn't going to change who he was to fit someone else's teachings. He was a monster, and he relished in the fact. Like he had always said. Sometimes, the world didn't need another hero. Sometimes, what it needs is a monster. And he would give the world what it needed. Naruto's eyes snapped to the door before the knock even came. Along with his gaze, Sasuke, Gaara, and Jiraiya turned as well, unity obviously activated. Letting go of the three shinobi, Naruto gestured for Gaara to open the door. He smiled before Gaara even held the doorknob. It was beginning. A frantic Shizun rushed past Gaara, a look of sadness and slight betrayal marring her face. She was in front of Naruto and Jiraiya within seconds, and they could tell from her harsh breathing and sweat-covered brow that she had been running. Jiraiya-sama, Naruto-san, she began in an urgent tone, Tsunade-sama has accepted the Akatsuki's request. she shouted in a terrified voice. She's gone to meet them now. The room went silent for what seemed like an eternity. And then it happened. Shizen saw it for the first time. Naruto's true, monster smile was finally shown to her. And it scared her. Orochimaru chuckled darkly as Tsunade slowly walked with the congregated Akatsuki members, her head hung low. She obviously didn't like what she was going through with, but he knew the deal was too sweet to pass up. With Tsunade on their side, they actually had a chance at defeating the Uzumaki. He wasn't completely useless either. He could still fight, despite his lack of useful arms. He wasn't a member of the Sannin for nothing, after all. Sasori could overwhelm even him if he put his mind to it, and Orochimaru knew he was no pushover. Naruto would have a hard time facing someone with the skill his previous, and now present, partner wielded. Kisame had been conditioning his body to withstand Naruto's sheer chakra size, increasing his own reserves in the process. He was deadly before, but now he was monstrous. The man held a lot of chakra, and Orochimaru knew he would not fail with the blonde like he did when they first met. Itachi was said to be on par with the bringer of hope when they worked together, and even though Uzumaki increased his strength, so had Itachi. His eyes were, in the simplest of terms, outstanding. He hadn't been able to even touch the young shinobi when he first joined the Akatsuki, but now. Uchiha Itachi was someone Orochimaru respected a great deal. He had raw power, finesse, and a tactical mind that rivaled the greatest of Naras. Tsunade may not be as she once was, but she was still by far the greatest kunoichi, period. Her medical ninjutsu was rivaled by none, and she would allow them to fight even after they were fatally wounded. They would certainly be victorious. And that's when they felt it. They had been walking the grassy fields just outside Tanzakugai. The sun was bright and there were only a few clouds littering the baby blue sky above. It wasn't too cold or too hot, just perfect. Mother Nature was completely blind to what was happening. Suddenly, a powerful surge of chakra roared in the green fields, causing the Akatsuki members to pause mid-step. The sheer size of the chakra that was brought down on them was enough to send shivers down their spine. Tsunade actually had to remember to breathe, it was that large. It felt like the anger of Kami was forced upon them, and she felt she was the cause of that anger. She tried to stop shaking, finding it incredibly difficult when her entire world was that overwhelming feeling. She was scared. Tsunade, a voice that sounded like Naruto and multiple other, deeper voices screamed from across the plain of green grass. It sounded inhuman. Without preamble, 5 people appeared, barely even 15 feet away. You disappoint me, that inhuman voice was the young blonde shinobi she had faced, but he looked different. His eyes were the same, gold with slit pupils, but the look he was giving her was terrifying. Ah, Naruto-kun. Orochimaru intoned. His very voice disgusted him. So nice of you to make our task easier, he said. I'm going to rip you to shreds with Samahata, kid. Kisame said with pleasure, his shark-like features twisted into sick rage. His emotions were that of a man who craved for revenge. He had been humiliated, and he would taste the blonde's blood, he promised himself this. So this is who everyone can't stop talking about, then. Next to the disgusting serpent was someone Naruto didn't quite recognize. He wore the same black cloak with red clouds, so he must have been a member of the Akatsuki. The mystery man was severely hunched over, and the majority of his face was covered in cloth. He felt odd, like he was only partly alive. This must be Sasori, the missing nin, from Suna. Naruto was silent, staring at the woman in front of him with contempt. This was no woman. This was a girl who lost her will. She was a little girl who lost her will of fire. To the right of Tsunade, Itachi stood, a neutral look on his face as his crimson eyes took in the monstrous amounts of chakra Naruto and Jiraiya were flaring. The amount alone was enough to make Itachi firmly believe they were on a scale not many even knew of. Sage mode was truly a terrifying thing. Naruto, Itachi began, his voice holding all the power the Uchiha held. Today, the Akatsuki will have the Biju you hold. He said, playing along. He had to act the role he was given after all. When Nezumi gave an order, you were a foolish idiot who was suicidal if you denied it. Again, Naruto just ignored everyone and everything, his empathy entirely directed at Tsunade. Her will of fire was dim. It was time to light it up. You have forsaken your will of fire, Tsunade. He spoke in a deadly whisper, his chakra boiling, screaming to be released, to let loose his restraint. To kill. The will of fire has forsaken me. She shouted, her fear vanishing, replaced with white-hot rage. Do not pretend to know me, boy. She continued with her rant. I have sacrificed more than you could ever know for that godforsaken village. All my family is gone. I am alone because of that place. It took everything from me. I won't let it have my life too. She was shaking with rage and sorrow, memories of her beloved grandfather, little brother, lover. Everything was gone. Naruto sighed, shaking his head, closing eyes slowly. He would have to show her, then. How could you say those words in front of Shizune? He whispered, his voice wavering as if he was hurt just as much as the woman in question. Tsunade's eyes widened, her entire body freezing. She slowly looked at the girl she had trained, who she traveled the world with. Sure, she started, but stopped when she saw the hurt expression on the woman's face. How could you claim to be all alone when she has been by your side all these years? He screamed, his chakra increasing. He shook with rage. He could feel Shizune as if they were the same person, and he felt her pain like a knife to the heart. How can you claim to be alone when the entire village loves and adores you? He shouted again, their eyes meeting. You don't know true loneliness. You don't know what it means to truly be alone. His chakra exploded, the might of his energy almost palpable. The members of the Akatsuki actually took a step back, readying themselves for an inevitable attack. Naruto. Jiraiya whispered. He hadn't planned for his godson to get this upset. You have lost your way, Tsunade. Nawaki and Dan would be disgusted. Tsunade opened her mouth to scream at him for assuming he knew her family at all, but she was stopped when his chakra seemed to fold on itself. The sheer density of it should have been impossible. He was refining a torrent of pure, almost living energy like it was child's play. So let me show you. He said in a quiet, tame voice, let me remind you what the will of fire feels like. The clearing became deathly silent, and in a blink of an eye, Naruto was upon them. I'll take you all on, he shouted, his fist already lashing out at his closest enemy. Itachi fell, his life ended in seconds as the yin-yang natural energy covered fist tore into his abdomen. Orochimaru and Kisame's eyes widened, and Tsunade froze, her hemophobia taking over her. With incredible reflexes, Kisame's blade was poised in the air, descending on Naruto with great speed. Naruto, however, didn't even bother looking the shark man's way, bringing his gaze to the man he knew to be Sasori of the Red Sand. Just before the chakra-devouring sword could take off his head, a wall of dense sand rose from the earth, blocking the strike and pushing Kisame away. Kisame's shark-like eyes narrowed as he turned to face the red-headed kid with the gourd on his back. Before he could yell at him for interfering, sand continuously rushed at him, giving him no time to monologue. A large sound was heard, and a huge cloud of smoke appeared in the clearing. When the smoke cleared, a giant, intimidating snake appeared. Manda. Orochimaru could be heard from atop the chief snake's head. 100 sacrifices is nothing. His smirk was pure sinister. Kill them all, and you shall be provided thousands. The giant snake hissed in pleasure, rather liking the sound of Orochimaru's offer. With incredible speed, Manda rushed at the enemies of its summoner, ready to kill. That's when the sand stopped chasing Kisame, and tackled the giant snake. Naruto just stared at Tsunade, who was shaking, already on her knees, the blood of Itachi still shocking her. Gaara! Naruto shouted, never taking his eyes off of the blonde woman before him. I think it's time for Shikaku to come out and play. He told his newest student. Gaara had a faint smirk on his face, still amazed at how easy it was when the Ichibi cooperated. Together, they could truly become the ultimate defense, a worthy shield. The very thought caused his chakra to race through his tenketsu. This was it. It was time to wake up. Sand exploded in every direction, racing in the sky, creating something larger than even Manda. The Ichibi's curse mark ran up and down the sand, forming its body. Within seconds, Shikaku greeted the world. Looking up at the towering tanuki, Manda hissed. Oh, it feels good to be outside. Shikaku shouted. His grin was borderline mad, and his eyes held nothing but bloodlust. Let's party! He shouted, raising his sand arm into the air, ready to swat Manda away with a single thrust. Naruto took a deep breath, his chakra once again folding on itself. He could see Jiraiya taking on both Kisame and Sasori with Sasuke, the latter still with his bandages wrapped around his eyes. They were all connected, even Jiraiya, with unity, and Naruto could feel the natural energy that coursed through his godfather's body, fueling his sage mode. With them connected, they all but shared the natural energy, so since Naruto could continuously absorb the powerful energy, so could Jiraiya. Neither of them would ever run out, if that's what they wished. His eyes then met Orochimaru's, and his rage increased. Orochimaru. Naruto's smile was a mixture of pure hate and overwhelming joy. Didn't I tell you before? I'm going to kill you. Naruto whispered. I'm going to enjoy it, too. This time when he spoke, it was the voice of two entities. Naruto was now syncing with Kurama, and the two were going to rip everything to shreds. You draw your last breath today, traitor. I promise you that. His words were absolute, and with another blink, Orochimaru was face to face, mere inches, with his death. Using inhuman flexibility, Orochimaru snaked around Naruto's punch, his mouth already open, ready to rip his opponent's throat out, when he was stuck with a force that staggered him. He immediately understood what had happened. Your skill in senjutsu is extraordinary. Orochimaru mused as he slowly tried stand, his head a foggy mess. I'm going to send you to hell with the snap of my fingers. He promised. He slowly stalked towards the phased Sannin, his chakra soaring to the point that all fighting ceased, those present snapping their eyes to his direction. The earth shook, small cracks webbing through the green ground. Tsunade, who had actually been snapped out of her fear of blood-induced frozen state, met the eyes of someone who was more like her grandfather than she ever thought possible for another human being to be. They felt similar. Their very presence was overwhelming. When bronze met furious gold, a silent message was sent to her with the force of a sledgehammer. Naruto stood over Orochimaru, who was still dazed, kneeling in front of him in a haze. He raised his right arm, and all the chakra he was bringing down upon them suddenly rushed to his hand. With the sheer amount of power that was forced in the tenketsu of his hand should have exploded, but against all logic, it hummed, like liquid gold. In a powerful harmony that spoke of complete mastery of chakra control. His middle finger met his thumb, and he raised it to the traitor's ear, speaking to the man who would know death soon. They would be the last words he would ever hear. For your trespasses against Konoha no Sato, Orochimaru of the Sannin, I sentence you to death at my hand. He met Tsunade's eyes again. Death to all enemies of heaven. And with a sickening snap of his fingers, the most powerful wave of yin-yang natural energy rippled across the grassy plains. The sound was so loud that the village in the distance went up with screams, the shockwave reaching them within seconds. Everything was silent, or maybe so loud that they couldn't hear, as Orochimaru exploded in blood and gore, the entire upper half of his body erased from existence. He really owed Uma for teaching this little trick to him all those years ago. The message was clear, if she was against Konoha, she would die. Turning his body to face the others, which was covered in crimson, he smiled. You want my bijou? You want my family? With another surge of powerful chakra, his body was covered in golden flame. I dare you to try. Staring at the boy, no. He was no boy. He was a monster. Tsunade blinked, a feeling deep in her stomach boiling to the surface, a feeling she hadn't felt in years. It was. Naruto smirked. So you can feel it? He asked. He had forced a connection between them with unity. She could now intimately feel his emotions, his desire to protect his home. She could feel his will of fire, and it burned with a ferocity that made her entire body warm. This is, she started to whisper. She stood, walking past Jiraiya and Sasuke to stand at the side of Sasori, everyone completely ignoring the monster showdown between the chief of snakes and the Ichibi. Show me your will of fire, Tsunade of Konoha, he roared. To her left, wood exploded in all directions, as Tsunade's fist met Sasori's husk. From the husk, a smaller figure jumped into the air, his body cloaked in Akatsuki robes. Jumping back to meet his associate, Kisame stood next to the red-headed true form of Sasori. What is this treachery, Tsunade? The puppet master seethed. Tsunade wiped the blood of Itachi from her face, greatly surprising Shizune. The gaki over there showed me something I thought died out a long time ago. She took in a deep breath, her chakra humming in her body. I can feel it again. She smiled. It's been so cold without it. She whispered. She straightened her posture, her sizable bust perking slightly, as she gave a determined look. Naruto, she shouted. Immediately, Naruto was at her side, kneeling to the woman. Hi, Hokage-sama. He said the words with pure delight, his voice his own again, the gold flames still flickering around his form. Send the Akatsuki a message, she ordered. The feeling the blonde had sparked within her was glorious. She hadn't felt such strong emotions in her entire life. Konoha is not a village to be trifled with, she stated, watching as the shinobi smiled. Your wish, Hokage-sama, he rose, is my command, he stated, vanishing in a gilded flash. The words came from behind them. Time to die. This was all for now. Thank you for watching, I hope you liked it and that you will be back for more. Please like, share and subscribe. See ya.